Week. My name is Samantha, and I'll be your host today. And a huge thank you again to Suffolk University's Sawyer Business School for hosting this conference. Suffolk University hosts a lot of great opportunities for learning, both in and outside of these classrooms. We really appreciate their partnership hosting the entirety of Startup Boston Week, both last year and this year. The goal behind Startup Boston Week is to connect the entire greater Boston and New England startup community, all industries, all startup departments, and all bootstrapped and funding stages for 5 days of learning and connecting with one another. The team that creates Startup Boston Week is primarily volunteer-led, and the folks working the conference today here are volunteering their time as well. So thank you so much for attending. It's a labor of love, and we really appreciate you playing a role in shaping our startup community. Thank you so much again for attending, and on to the session.
All right, yeah, thank you so much, Boston Startup Week. This is such an awesome opportunity, and I'm super excited to be moderating this panel for you. I'll just do a quick introduction. My name is Bella Pivo. I'm currently a fourth year. That's Northeastern's fancy term for a senior, so soon to be graduating in May. I'm a combined major of business and communications, and I'm here to talk about, with the rest of these lovely people who are about to introduce themselves, balancing the tightrope, about academics and entrepreneurship, about being a student founder. So to kick it off, I would love for all of you to introduce yourselves, your backgrounds, what you do, your companies that you're working on, and also, as a fun little question, if your startup had to have a class at a university, what would it be, and what would it teach its students? Anyone can take it.
Yeah, so I'll go first. I'm Parth. I just graduated from BU a few months back. I studied marketing there. I also run a startup called Pro Munch, where we make high-protein, vegan, and gluten-free snacks, which are tasty as well. The products are available in India as well as in US on Amazon as well as Walmart. And like the question and about the course which I would teach would be networking for sure, because I think in the end, the brand or a product with a better network wins the game.
Very good point. Hi, I'm Sherry Worthington. I'm a full-time professor here at Suffolk, and I'm also a serial entrepreneur. I have a very weird background. And I was started out as a science geek, so I'm the resident geek usually in every room I'm in. I've got 5 startups so far, and if I was to teach a course based on one of them, I do obviously teach courses here. But if it was based purely on my startup, it would be on my fun failure, and it would be financial management, because I waited too long to figure out the whole profitability thing.
Awesome. Hey everyone, you guys can hear me? Pretty all right? So my name is Jeremy Colon. I'm the co-founder of Revamp Training. We're a private personal training studio in Dorchester where we combine holistic wellness practices with strength functional training to help busy professionals in the area just, get better both emotionally and physically. I actually was a student at Les University for both my undergraduate and my graduate, where I started the first student-based business, and we can talk about that a little later. And just the answer to the question, if I was to teach a course, it would be the art of renegotiating your reality. Because a lot of us have choices and a lot of decisions we can make for the better, but sometimes we just need a little bit more of a pull to get there.
Yeah, all awesome answers, and I really loved how each of you really had a different skill that you wanted to impart onto your students, from like the finances to like networking, and then overall just like vision is such important in many different assets. Personally, if I were to teach a course, I think it would be called Peace of Mind, but spelled P-I-E-C-E. And I think that it would blend personal development and also creating a startup. With my background in leading a bunch of entrepreneurship clubs at Northeastern, I've seen that a lot of students really tend to lose themselves at the start, and I'm sure that we're going to get into also mental health and whatnot, but this course I think would specifically talk about how to balance yourself as a person and the company at the same time. I want to point this question specifically to Sherry, because you work a lot with students and entrepreneurship, and then we can kick it over to the others about this too. But what are some myths about student entrepreneurship that you've ran into, and what do you say about them? Are they true?
Yeah, so I've got 2 that I'd like to just quickly talk about. The first one is all entrepreneurs do it for the money. And the reality is, my research has shown that, in fact, is only one of many different reasons. And in fact, I found most entrepreneurs start it because they're trying to solve a problem. There's a problem, they found a gap in the market, and it's just driving them nuts and they have to fix it. And so that's really, I think, why most, from my research shows, most entrepreneurs start their businesses. But I kind of wanted to address right at the beginning here the elephant in the room, which is, do I have to go to college to be an entrepreneur, to be a successful entrepreneur? And it's that, the research shows the majority of people do go to college, associates or bachelors, and a lot of them have advanced degrees. You don't have to, but I got to tell you, the colleges these days are not like what they were when I was younger. They have so many resources available. They can connect you to investors. They can connect you to teammates, right? I find that's one of the biggest problems for my student entrepreneurs is I have a great idea, but we need to build out our team, and I don't know enough people who can help me with that. We can introduce you to other successful alumni in large quantities, larger than you would find within your own network. And so take advantage of that. People love working with students. They like to help you guys out. And so I think that's a really big value add.
Yeah, for sure. And you two chime in. Are there any, in your experiences, myths that have been completely busted?
Yeah, I would say anecdotally, do I need to have everything figured out? Do I need to have all the skill sets to, reach the goal that I need to achieve? And the answer is no. You can mess up all you want. There's no rush to get to where you need to be. A lot of us don't get a chance to enjoy the process of just being entrepreneurs or just being students. So I would say that's definitely a miss because all of us have pretty much risen from circumstances and challenges just to learn key things that have either, helped us move to a different direction or reminded us to avoid.
Do you have any? We can also go to the next question if you'd like.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So I think you talked a little bit about this. Do I need to go to college, things like that? And then if I'm in college, how do I even find the time or the balance between, do I prioritize my academics or do I prioritize, my startup, especially when those make or break moments tend to happen? So my question to you is, all of you, how do you achieve this work-life balance? Or maybe it's about managing and being more effective with how you spend your time. Either one, whichever one suits you.
So I think the most important aspect in managing academics with your startup is, manage time effectively. With that being said, I would suggest taking one task at a time and doing your best to fulfill that, and then move on to the another one so that you don't miss any of the tasks which are at hand. Then I think we are always overwhelmed by a lot of work. So I think, it's also important to have a downtime where you reflect on the work you have done over the week. So I think that's a good strategy that I follow.
If I may follow on that, I've got a great follow-on for that, Parth. So early on in my entrepreneurship career, I attended a series of workshops and webinars specifically for small business CEOs. And one of the interesting things they taught me early on was exactly this interesting time management skill, which is break your week down into focus time, free time, and buffer time. So focus time is when you're working on those big major projects, you have to get done, whether it's a paper or it's a business model that you've got to complete. Then you've got to make sure that you have some free time to keep yourself sane. And then buffer time is when you fill in with all those other things that need to be done, the fires you're fighting and all the other stuff. Reading email, right? You start that in the morning and you could be 3 hours before you get done with that, and you can't let that happen to your schedule. So focus free and buffer time. I lay out all 7 days of the week and organize them that way. I found that helps a lot.
And also to add to the awesome answers from the other panelists, I would say have a healthy mix of measuring not only your expectations, but your boundaries, right? What are you willing to do? Is it worth it? And we don't spend too much time asking ourselves these key questions internally. If it's worth the time, is it worth the effort? Does it get us where we need to be? Because before we can even write things down on paper, we have to almost be in agreement with ourselves if we're going to do it or not. And that's something to always keep in mind, that before we even start an action, it kind of starts with the mind, if it's there or not.
Can I add on to that, Bella, if you don't mind?
Please go ahead. So
I took my students to see the new restaurant that's opened at the Raffles Hotel, the new fancy hotel we have here in Back Bay. It's run by Eric Papachristos, La Padrona. very high-end restaurant, very difficult to get a table there. And so the students had a chance to ask Eric questions. And it was interesting to listen to the way they were asking him questions because he has devoted himself. He is a restaurateur known very well in Boston. He's got 9, I think, different restaurants. And he's devoted himself to that. And he talks about, there's a marriage in the past, and he really doesn't have time for a lot of that. So his personal time, he's kind of narrowed down because he loves what he does. He gets up in the morning, he goes to the gym, he bikes to all his restaurants, he then meets with people, partners, friends, whatever it is, but it integrates all in throughout the day. And the way the students were asking the question, it was interesting because it was almost like they said, you should feel bad about not having more personal time. And I'm like, actually, you do what you love. Do what invigorates you. Do what energizes you, whether it's hanging out with friends or it's building a business, finding new partners, juggling those financial statements. All right, that's usually not top of the list, right? But you do what you love and let that fill your week that makes you happy, right?
Yeah, those are really amazing insights. I'm taking mental notes right now, like Sherry, that focus time, really good for my classes right now, honestly. Really great information all being shared right now. And I would like to take us back to when you were students working on your startups and whatnot. And I know that we talked about, it's interesting that Sherry, you brought up almost feeling bad about, having no personal time.
And I don't feel bad.
Right, and you don't feel bad because if you love what you do, then why not keep doing it? So the question that I then ask you with that is, when you do what you love and you're a student, and you blend those two, how do you use being a student actually to your advantage? And how can students now maximize the time that they have currently in school before they graduate? And they might go full time, or maybe they're working on it on the side. Like, what should they be doing?
Yeah, I'll answer that question, right? So just for some context, right? When I was a student, right, one key thing that happened to me, and you guys can ask me this later on, I'll tell you this whole story. During college, I actually ended up giving my dad my kidney. So during that time frame, right, remembering being a student, you have all the freedom. You have all the freedom to put yourself out there, go to local businesses, right? Be that dumb kid that asks, how do you run this business, right? And ask those questions because people out there want to help you. They want to support you. They just don't know how to. And a lot of us don't ask. So being a student to your advantage is an amazing thing because, no one's really doing out there. No one's really putting themselves out there. So the fact that you're a student gives you the advantage to just be a student who's yearning for information, yearning for answers.
And I gotta say, the general perception out there has changed over the years. It used to be when you were a student and you went out and asked for help, people kind of like, I don't have time for this, right? But nowadays, entrepreneurship is top of mind for a lot of people, and it's a hot area. Everyone appreciates what it adds to the economy, jobs, all these other things, new innovations. And so I encourage my students, in fact, I assign them in many of my courses to go out and talk to people and tell them you're a student and that you're looking for X, or you want to talk to them about X, whatever it is. And I got to tell you, 90% of the time, they have great success and learn interesting things. So don't be shy about it.
Yeah, I think you are, just one step away from the greatness of being a student. So I think being a student gives you like an added advantage in the world, and there are lovely resources available for students in every university, which since I was in BU, I got to be a part of the Innovate at BU, the entrepreneurship cell there, as well as I was able to participate and then win a few competitions. So I think I made sure to make notes of every competition or every resource what the university had to offer, so that I made sure that I was participating in every event of that.
So I don't know if you guys have heard the story of the founder of Fetch, the coupon app. So Wes, the CEO, he got his initial venture money from pitch competitions. So he started at his own university, I think it was Michigan, and then he won $150,000, and he said, okay, I'm going to try the one over here. So he went to 5 different pitch competitions, and everywhere he went, he would bring in a new partner for his team from that school so they could compete. And they ended up raising, I don't know, $300,000, $400,000 that way, which got them started.
Honestly, really great points. I always love to mention that like universities themselves, I mean, outside of the plethora of things that you can find on LinkedIn and Twitter, Instagram, things like that, there's just so much I call like free money just laying around in these universities. I was in charge and the CEO of IDEA, which is Northeastern's venture accelerator, and we give out $30,000 in non-equity grants to not any venture, there's a process, of course, but we help them all along the way because people do want to see the success of students. And what I love to tell founders as well is having that at university, like .edu email is so strong, and using it for like that very short period of time of 4 years is like so crucial. So to kind of speak on maybe using the student card and networking and whatnot, it can feel kind of daunting when we, don't get that connection request back, or we get ghosted, or something happens. So how do you view failures, and how did you use them as an advantage? And when you look back on them, what lessons have they taught you? And this is to anybody who wants to start.
Yeah, I could probably speak on that because I've had plenty of failures as a student getting to this point. And it's how we shift the perspective of failure. And failure is what we do, the outcome that we hope to achieve doesn't get achieved, that it adds to our experience, it adds to our base. It's a past event that we can now use to our advantage. All right, and we can look back at it. If I send an email or a request to someone on LinkedIn that didn't happen to get accepted, okay, you kind of look at it from the perspective like, oh, why did that happen? Was my approach off? Was my delivery off? You take those key points, and you're not being hard on yourself. You're looking at it as a way to be reflective on, all right, I can do better in how I present myself, how I approach myself. If I'm running a management club and I need speakers, and I'm going into the area, and there's the founder or business owner of the Boston Burger Company, or someone in a high position at Bank of America, and I want them to speak at my university. All right, I can't come the way I'm looking. I gotta fit the part or look the part, and be able to hold a conversation. And if that didn't go well, okay, great. Then you just take the key points. And sometimes asking people for feedback is also very important, because they'll give you feedback on what you can do. So it's always, don't look at failure as a failure, but a way of a stepping stone to move towards that next big project or that next best thing.
Well, and that's exactly what we teach in the classroom. Thank you for that. That was a great lead-in, Jeremy. So pivoting, right? That is my favorite business term, pivoting. We all pivot every day, personal life, business life, it doesn't matter, because nothing ever goes perfectly. There's a great quote from the former, I think it was Immelt from GE, who said, nothing that GE ever launched, now Mammoth Company, nothing ever went according to the original plan. They always had to pivot. So it's an essential part of being an entrepreneur, right? There's passion. Are you passionate about, you care what you're doing? Persistence, can you get through the ups and downs? But then pivoting is really crucial. So that's all about failing fast, failing early, and then pivoting as you go. Learn, so you send out that LinkedIn request, and you don't get somebody to respond back like, well, okay, what can I do better the next time? So a lot of students that I know don't fill in the little introduction piece when you go to make the connection. So you create a couple of sentences that you can use. Hey, I was looking at your profile. You and I have this in common, whatever it is, right? Or I'm really interested in X. That's much more likely to get you the connection than just a generic, who are you kind of request. So learn you go.
Adding on to other panelists, I think failure teaches more than what success does. And in my past experiences, I'm an engineer, so I had to go through a lot of courses, like very difficult courses, which has definitely taught me the meaning of failure and how it has helped me shape my company or my startup. And it has definitely made me more resilient, because when you go through a lot of academic stress, you almost think of giving up. And then when you decide, you just have to give it one more shot. And then this is what keeps an entrepreneur going. So I think it has definitely made me more resilient than before.
That is a great answer. I just want to add on, if I may, Bella. So you talk about persistence, right? That's a crucial part of what we do and why we do it. It gets us through a lot, but there's positive persistence and there's negative persistence. So if you haven't done it, Angela Duckworth has a grit scale, which basically measures persistence. And so it's a 0 to 5 scale. A lot people come up all over the range. Mine happened to be 4.4, and I'm like, oh, isn't that cool? And then I thought, you know what? The problem is I tend to persist beyond reason, right? So my tendency is I'm on a path and I'm going to keep going, but the reality is like my little mousepad company, right? The fun failure, right? The profits weren't there, but I went beyond what I probably reasonably should have done because I've got a bit of negative persistence. I score so high on it. So you really want a magic balance between positive and negative.
Yeah, really great answers. And I love that, Parth, you talked about resilience. And to kind of talk about that, a lot of the times being a student and an entrepreneur, we talked a little bit about like the balance between those two. But when you fail, like, not that you're failing a class, of course, but maybe you don't get the grade that you want, or something happens, how do the failures between your startup and then also in academics relate to each other? Is there any connection between those?
There's a big connection because really, it really goes back to who you are as an individual first and a business person second, right? If we're harder on ourselves for whatever reason, we don't get anywhere because we're not reflecting back. We're not looking back at things. We're like, oh, it's me. It's my fault, my fault. And in one aspect, yeah, accountability is great and all, but you're not moving to action. You're just sitting. So part of being more resilient with failure is what can I do today to move things forward? Yeah, I had a setback. Yeah, I didn't make that money. Yeah, I didn't get to talk to that person, and that's fine. Take the accountability, accept it as what it is. But what are you going to do today to move forward to make it a reality, make it happen? And those are the things that we have to pretty much always look at, no matter what. That it's like what it is today, and life is life. We always go through certain situations. Life's gonna happen. You know, we're gonna hear bad news. We're gonna be confronted with bad grades if it happens, right? Or that deal that we were so excited that we're gonna happen to close didn't close. What's next? Are we gonna sit there? Or we're gonna move?
Wow, mic drop for sure. That was awesome.
How do you balance, Bella? You do a lot over there at Northeastern.
Yeah, I mean, I do love this question. I really like to think of life as just like, you know, a series of kind of things that lead to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. I happen to be majoring in like startups and whatnot. But in high school, I had noticed something about myself that was, okay, what am I passionate about? At the time, it was American Sign Language, and I taught myself and had a club and everything. And I had that passion so much that I tried to find any opportunity in classes to make sure that I was going to pursue that. So in my film class, I made a documentary about the deaf community. When I was in my English class, I wrote a proposal as to why every high school should have American Sign Language. So I just kind of found a way, like in my classes, to make sure that I was doing what I loved. To, you know, quote you, Sherry, literally, when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work and it doesn't feel like you're burning yourself out. And I think when you really know what you do love and just try to apply that to everywhere is so important. You're not going to get burnt out. And the balance does kind of come naturally because all of those different areas are just like intertwined between everything. If you really, you know, make that balance for yourself, and you have to be conscious of that. But that's how I try to balance and apply it to everywhere.
That's a really good point. So in business school these days, again, it's not like it used to be. Most courses have some kind of a project. And certainly if you're on the entrepreneurship side, taking entrepreneurship management courses, they often will let you bring in your own idea for a project. Most of my students work on their startups as the project in the class, which I think is great. They find new team members. It's a great way to actually build to the next step.
Yeah, for sure. And to talk, I mean, we touched a little bit about mental health, setting boundaries, of course. But how can we prevent burnout? Or maybe not even prevent it, because maybe it's inevitable for some of us, but how can we see the warning signs and really strive for that like work-life balance? I mean, we can really say that we love doing what we do, but then there's a point where like that passion could be overtaking. So how do you manage that and see the warning signs of burnout coming up?
I can pretty much speak on that. I think in one way or another, at one point, we probably seen our quality of life dwindle down. We don't see our friends anymore. We don't call our parents, right? We don't get a chance to decompress, watch our favorite show, have conversations, whether texting or phone call. So I feel like the biggest red flag is when that quality of life, especially when you're young and you're free and you're open, you're in college. For God's sake, you can do pretty much anything, and for the most part, the consequences are a little bit lower than when you're postgraduate. So I feel like when that happiness factor starts to kind of go down, and you're not seeing yourself being social and active, that's when you're like, oh my God, let me take a step back. I'm probably burning out. I'm so wrapped into my business. And sometimes when you're wrapped in doing your business, you forget that you're in it. You're in the trenches. Your work is piling up and you're not giving yourself a chance to breathe or touch grass or go outside. So I just think when you can kind of see like the biggest warning sign that it starts to affect the quality of yourself and those around you, take a step back and ask yourself, am I doing too much right now?
Let me add another dimension to that, 'cause it's a great answer, and it's one I've heard a lot. I'm an introvert. All right, so it turns out the way I know I'm getting in trouble is I'm doing all these things. I'm out there talking to people, and maybe friends, maybe work, whatever it is. But I'm maxing out, and it all starts to blend together, and it's stressing me out. I know now, after all these years, I need to go home at the end of the day. After all of this insanity we've got here going on today, right? I will go home at the end of the day, and I will spend an hour by myself. Nobody else is going to talk to me, right? This is how introverts recharge, right? So I need that time to read a book, watch something stupid on TV, whatever it is. I've got to cut everybody out. So some people do it by inviting friends in. Others of us have to kind of like, I need my little space here. And don't be afraid of it. Know who you are. Know what recharges you. Know what makes you happy. And it's okay to be on either side. Sometimes you have to be an extrovert, right? And sometimes you have to be an introvert. And find your balance.
And that changes over time. You may like you guys could probably look at me and like, oh, he's probably a social butterfly, but it wasn't that in the beginning. My social meter was low. When it depleted and went zero, you didn't see me. But look at me now. Things can change.
So relatable. I mean, Sherry, I relate. I am also an introvert, and that always surprises anybody I talk to because
Yes.
I'm the first person at like our involvement fair being like, who wants $30,000? And just like trying to get people to come in. And then at the end of the day, they're like, you want to hang out? And I'm like, I have a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle to do. I'm clocking out. But that's just because like I know, and like that's just how I work, and that's how I recharge. And it's so important to know yourself in that way. So I guess, how do you sustain passion? I know that we talked about the work-life balance, but the passion part, sometimes maybe what you're passionate about kind of falls off. And so what happens? We talked a little bit about pivoting, but how do you reignite that passion?
Yeah, you guys don't mind. Because passion, right? If we're not following that with action, then it's just a pipe dream. It's just wishful thinking. So I think passion needs to follow some sort of habit building, which ends up being what? Discipline. Discipline at the end of the day will break through any plateaus, will help us get through any times, any barriers. So I think finding ways to add to that discipline, habit building, listening to stories, watching videos, right? Finding ways to recharge by coming to events like this, interacting and hearing people's stories and insights and perspective to just add to that. Because a lot of times we just need a reminder. Otherwise, it's just like, things happen and we're like, oh my God, I didn't achieve what I had achieved. So, the fire starts to dwindle down, and a lot of us just kind of need something to just push us forward just a little bit to just get us to get to where we need to be.
Man, I love just playing off your comments here. So one of the things I encourage my students to do along these lines is change what you're doing. All right, so in my design thinking class, I encourage my students to start walking to class a different way, right? Do something different, drive whatever you're going a different way, because we get into these habits, we get in, and we also have knowledge corridors. Here's what I know really well. I'm going to kind of stick to my comfort zone, but as a result, we miss out on big opportunities, but it also kind of reinforces the passion, what you care about and what you do. And I'm going to give you kind of a tangential example. One of my students that I encouraged to do something different. So he walked to class a different way, and he took out his buds and put away his phone, and he's just walking down Tremont Street, and he literally ran into Jalen Brown. All right, he just bumped into him. He looked up, of course, and Jalen looked down. Hey, how you doing? The kid, it like changed his life. He is never going to be the same. It's like, oh, I'm such a big Celtics fan, and it would have been one of those routine bumps that we all have when we're walking around if he had not been paying attention. So again, find opportunities to change things up, and it will help you keep kind of that flame alive.
Yeah, definitely. Starting, first thing first, I would say doing what you like, what you're passionate about, is the first step to success. And often, when we are too much into something, it definitely, like, you get overwhelmed. And how I approach this is, just remembering why you started it, what made you start it, and what's the mission that you are trying to do. For me, it's about helping people meet their daily protein intake effortlessly. So I think I try to remember that why I started, so that keeps me motivated throughout.
Yeah, for sure. All really great responses. Love the passion. To kind of change the subject to something a little bit more tangible and talk about finances, how would you give advice to students? I know maybe one of the myths that we didn't talk about is like, oh, I need all this money in order to do something. And sometimes there's even student discounts, like you can use Squarespace for 100% off, or sorry, $100 off. And going into finances, how, being a student, how do you manage your personal finances and then into funding your startup? Do you put money into it? Do you not? And how do you handle those risks, especially if your startup is self-funded? Any one of you?
Yeah, I think in the beginning you're gonna bootstrap your business. It's just a common thing. You'll get lucky, and maybe get the university to get behind you. You may make some connections, and those are variables that if it happens, it happens. But for most of us, we have to pretty much use our own pocketbooks, and if it's empty, we got to figure out how we're gonna go about it. So I think, like anything else, writing things down is super powerful, right? Figuring out how much money do I need to make in order to achieve XYZ. If I'm offering personal training services, what is that going to cost what is that going to cost me? My time, my effort, and figuring out what your expenses look like, and then in almost reverse engineer and work backwards to that, because a lot of us, don't know our numbers. We don't know how much we need to make, so we're just aimlessly going outside trying to reach a goal that may or may not be close to what we really need to do in order to pay our bills, go out, have fun, and just kind of enjoy what life's, offering us.
Don't tell your finance professor you don't really know what you need.
And definitely do not do that.
Also, be creative in how you acquire or find resources. So I have an example. So everyone thinks I've got to buy what I need. I have a student team that was working on a new technology for 3D printing high quality, ridiculously high quality aerospace parts. So jet wings, things like that. The printer that was needed to actually produce the material that they created was $800,000. And they're a startup, right? And they have a few people. There's no way they're coming up with that on their own. So what they did is they went around to the local manufacturing community and they found a manufacturer that had the 3D printer, was using it for something else, but they weren't using it on the third shift. So the night shift, right, midnight to 6, 7 a.m. So they actually leased from the company at a much smaller price tag, space on time on their system, and were able to get units out and then generate revenue when eventually they were able to buy their own machine.
Wow, I love hearing scrappy stories like that. It's always so awesome. Northeastern has a story like there was a vending machine that they like drove down from Canada or something, and I was like, oh my goodness, not mine. But like,
I love it.
I love those stories. I think it's like so awesome.
You gotta be scrappy, absolutely.
especially financially.
Well, yeah, no, and it's kind of funny because it's just like when we need to pay bills, we're always most creative, right? It's like never look at it as you're being desperate. It's like, okay, if I need to make like a certain amount of money by end of the month or in a couple of weeks, all right, I got to do something. I got to basically pick up some cans of paint or go out and cut some grass. But it's like we undershoot what we're able to really do because we're not pushing ourselves. And when we have pressure that's behind us, we're able to do a lot of creative, amazing things.
Yeah, so true. And then I guess this will be our last question before we open it up to audience Q&A. So gear up your questions. And I'll shoot this over to Parth, actually. What advice do you have for transitioning students? What they should get from today's talk, and also as they transition and start thinking about like post-grad, if the choice to go full-time on their startup is the right decision, what advice do you have for them?
I think planning is really required, as well as strategy, and as well as like I try to, when I was transitioning from a full-time student to an entrepreneur. Meanwhile, I was also working, but like after you graduate, you tend to devote a lot of time into your startup. So I make a lot of goals like periodically, let's say weekly, monthly, and quarterly goals in terms of number of followers, let's say for your brand or your Instagram page, or number of customers that you talk to on a weekly or monthly or a quarterly basis. So I think you have to keep the needle going, and it's also very necessary and important to keep your risk and aside, and also go all in, because I think that's what pays off. If you see all the big companies and the startups which have been made through college or from college dropouts, I think it's good to manage risk, but it's also go after your dreams and just pursue your passion.
Repeat the question one more time. I was listening to the part.
Yeah, advice for departing audience members, as well as if they are thinking about going full time on their business post graduation. Advice for that track.
The transition.
Oh, the transition. Yeah, that's a really good question. Because straight out of college, I went right into what I wanted to do, and that was to get into personal training, become a freelancer, and eventually open up my own studio. That happened, but what Parth was saying, go all in. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to fail. You will fail. You will fall flat on your face, but it's okay. The biggest thing, it's like you create your own luck through consistency and being persistent. The person who stays the longest doing what they want to do will eventually get lucky enough to achieve the dreams they want. So more or less, you may not have all the answers. You may not have all the resources. You have resources that you've used that may not be available because of the timing, but don't fret. There's still opportunity for you to make something happen brick by brick.
Well, and also think about it in terms of the stage you're at. So research shows that entrepreneurs generally fall into 3 categories, and they can move between. But you kind of start out with an inventor phase where you're creating this new idea, whether it's in a lab or you're actually creating a service idea, right? So you have the invention phase. That may not require full time, right? Then you have the founder stage where you're actually creating the organization, starting to build a team, pull in other resources. That also may not require full time, right? So you can adjust as you go. The third stage is the developer stage. This is now where you're ready to grow the company. Let's look for that hockey stick growth curve maybe, who knows? But now you're really devoting yourself to expanding the team, expanding the market space that you're in, going after new markets. So that is probably now where you're in a full-time mode. But the first 2, you can actually do part-time and kind of, pay the bills as you go.
Yeah, for sure. All really great advice for anybody in the room. The students, maybe more particularly. But I would love to leave this last chunk of time to the audience. And if there are any questions that you have for any of us, just feel free to let us know and raise your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for I think
Microphone.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, this is fancy. Hi. Thank you so much for your advice. I think many of us can relate to being perfectionists or type A individuals, especially if we're very passionate about what we do. And something that was always on my mind, especially as a young adult and somebody who has a lot of ambitions, is that we are our hardest critics. I know you've touched on failure and you've touched on negative persistence and things like that, but looking back, even though you guys just graduated or you're graduating, looking back, what is one thing you would say about the mental health side about, it's definitely hard, even if you do go through these failures, which are not really failures because you kept on going type of thing. What's one thing you would tell yourself to be like, okay, you're good, you're good?
Mm-hmm.
I'll let the others talk in just a sec. So for me, I take failure personally, and I wear my heart on my sleeve, and no's just devastate me. But I learned that early on. I actually was in sales for a year, and that's where I learned the hard way, right? You've got to take no. So failure's going to happen, no's are going to happen, and I just had to learn that it's okay. Everybody faces it. I felt like it was just me. I'm the one that's, messing up and nobody else is, but it wasn't. We all face this. And it took, entrepreneurship back then, nobody was talking about it. So it was like, wow, we now have a community. We know what goes on and we have much more transparency. So it's like, I'm not in this alone, and, built up a little support structure around you for when you need to go and cry for a few minutes or whatever it is, right?
And also, that's a great point. Also, to add to that, get into the habit of developing a short memory for failure, right?
Very good.
If it happened, hey, it's like being a quarterback. That's a bad throw. I got a straight turnover into. I guess that's it. That's it for me. I'm moving on to the next thing. Don't dwell so much on past failure, because you know what? It stops us from going to that next point. And sometimes you need to go through that failure or that setback in order for that next level to happen for you.
I would love to chime in on this. This full stop, this is from my therapist. She had to help a lot with this. And it's that you have to look at like points in your life where you've collected data. And if you are a highly ambitious person, you've probably been ambitious like your whole entire life. And there's evidence of you being ambitious and successful, and they are coexisting. So what I really like to do is sometimes it makes checking my LinkedIn a little bit to be like, oh, right, I have done this thing. Like, I have done this thing. And whatever I'm facing right now, it's like, no, I've done this before. Like, I'm going to do this again. I've done it again and again and again. And just reminding myself that I've built the mindset. And even though I'm maybe not in it right now, I know that I've done it before. And because I've done it before, I know that I can do it again, because it's just like repetition. So thank you for your question. That was awesome.
You.
I call my daughter or my sister, and I say, guess what happened? And they're like, we still love you. You're still good. Keep going.
Yeah. You need that support group.
You need that, yeah.
Thank you very much for a very informative panel. I would really like to hear Professor Worthington and
Bella?
compare your different programs at Suffolk and
Oh, like Northeastern versus Suffolk? Sure.
Yes.
So Northeastern has a slew of different entrepreneurship organizations. We actually have someone in the room from our Venture Mentor Network, shout out Jamal. And so we have this collection of student-run organizations called Mosaic. I don't know why it's called Mosaic, but I like to think of it's because you have a bunch of different student-run organizations that help you with a part of the venture process. So overall, we have IDEA, which is Northeastern's venture accelerator, and that helps all Northeastern affiliates, undergrads, all the way through alumni. Sorry. IDEA, our venture accelerator, helps undergrads all the way through alumni, has all different kinds of resources. We also have our mentor network, our venture mentor network. If they would like to self-identify, they can. And then Mosaic, all of the other student organizations, there's our brand development studio, for example, and that is called Scout, where if you are, let's say, a protein bar and you need help making a wrapper or a box, they will design it for you. They'll help you come up with your tone, your branding, colors, fonts, logos, etc. And then there's a slew of similar organizations that do different things, from product development, coding, actually connecting you to angels, helping you make pitch decks for VCs, things like that. So I like to describe it as a hug model, because you and your venture are placed at the center, and you come into any one of these resources and say, hey, this is my idea. Where do I go from here? And then from there, the entire ecosystem is so well connected that you're able to go to the product studio, you're able to go through the accelerator all at the same time. And they all have their own slew of different funding opportunities, network connections, etc.
Okay, so is this more than one?
Yeah.
Is this under?
Give a mic.
Okay, what programs are involved? I mean, in terms of getting the degree, what programs are involved with this?
Yeah, so these are, you don't have to make a company in order to graduate or anything, but all of these clubs kind of fall under a different college within Northeastern. So our business school has a club. Our College of Arts, Media, and Design also has a club. So we really stress that interdisciplinary aspect. You don't need to be a specific major in order to participate. And also the organizations don't cross count towards anything, but sometimes we actually will have some marketing classes who take later stage ventures and kind of help them and use that as a project. And that would be kind of where those resources and the classes intermix. But as for students taking a startup, going into the organizations, it does not count for classes.
Do you have an internship?
Yeah, so there's the co-op system at Northeastern. For those of you who don't know what co-op is, 4 to 6 months, usually paid, but doesn't always have to be paid. And there are co-ops available where you can work on your own company for 6 months, which is awesome. That's through our Sherman Center. And then I was lucky enough to actually do the co-op for IDEA, our venture accelerator, as its CEO last year. So the entire last year, I was doing this internship or co-op and as the CEO and making sure that all of the resources were fine, that we got new ventures, implementing a new software. Don't talk to me about that. It was a lot of work. But all of the different things like fundraising, events, things like that, I was in charge of, as well as managing my 40-person student undergraduate team.
You also have a lot of technical resources available, right? Because obviously it's an engineering school. It's
Yeah.
kind of the heart of it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. So Generate very specifically is under our engineering school, and they are all students, and ventures will apply into it as a software or a hardware product. So the vending machine that I mentioned earlier actually went through Generate. It was like protein powder and stuff. So you can apply into them, and then that student team will select which ventures they want to work on for an entire semester, all for free, don't take any stake as well. And then at the end of it, there's a whole showcase. So then Generate gets to display, this is the venture that we worked on. And most of the time, those ventures are also involved in other resources across campus.
So at Suffolk, on the academic side, we have undergrad entrepreneurship major, minor, concentration, or you can just cherry pick entrepreneurship courses as electives. On the graduate level, we teach entrepreneurship courses, design thinking courses at the MBA level, and then we also have an EMBA program for people who've been out working in the industry for a few years and then they come back. I teach entrepreneurship and leading innovation. So we've got all these things kind of feeding the minds, teaching theory and practice. And then we match that on the other side with a number of key resources. So the Center for Entrepreneurship is a bit like the hub and spoke thing, but not exactly. So we've got these parallel organizations. So the Center for Entrepreneurship does a lot of connecting between the Entrepreneurship Club, which is student-run. We have a student-run marketing agency that is willing to work with our entrepreneurs and their startups. We also have an IP and entrepreneurship law clinic. I got to tell you, hands down, it's one of the best resources around. So we can help you with copyrights, trademarks, patents for free. So students get free counseling and advice on all that. They just pay the filing fee. And so we bring all that stuff together. Oh, the College of Arts and Sciences also has I'm going to forget what it's called. It's a workshop, basically, where you can go in and use the tools to create physical prototypes. And they have a name for it that I always forget. And so the Center for Entrepreneurship kind of connects all the students over here, whatever aspect of entrepreneurship they're pursuing, with all these different resources. And we provide lots of events, connection to alumni, connections to investors, whether it's small private investors or larger investment firms. Alumni who've been there, done that, like Eric Papachristos I was mentioning earlier. By the way, he also owns Saloniki Greek, the fast casual restaurant right around the corner. It's really good. I love that place. So it's kind of a similar model, but different bodies are involved. We don't have quite as many engineering resources to bring to bear as Northeastern does. But again, one of the things I'm also working on is more cooperation amongst all the schools in the city. We're all here. We're all trying to serve the students in the same way and help them get those ventures launched. So we're working on some other stuff behind the scenes.
The legal entrepreneurship, are these law students or these actual
Yes, so
lawyers?
these are law students supervised by professors and practicing attorneys. So you're getting real good advice for nothing, which is hard to find. We also, when we run our pitch competitions, we have an IP pitch competition where students come in and pitch their idea to lawyers, to a bunch of lawyers, our alumni, and the prize is counseling. So you get free counseling from them, whether you're part of the IP and Law Clinic or not, IP and Entrepreneurship Clinic, that's it. And you also work with outside attorneys to get the next step beyond, what we can provide internally. So there's a lot to be had, and then we give away money. And like, right, Bella was talking about, they have a big pool. We have a 30K pitch competition that keeps growing. So, there's lots of really cool stuff going on. Did I forget anything? I got, okay.
Northeastern also has a similar, the IP clinic. We
Yes.
also have the same framework pretty much.
Because you got a bunch of lawyers over there.
Yeah, yeah,
My
yeah.
ex went there.
Yeah, awesome resource. I got my trademark in freshman year out of a no longer running company, and that was all like just paying the filing, which is such an awesome resource, but very similar as well. And speaking of pitch competitions and talking about trying to collaborate with a bunch of schools, IDEA actually did, or like Northeastern's IDEA did a pitch competition last spring where it was a collaboration between 10 Boston-based universities. Northeastern, Suffolk was also in it, Babson, et cetera, and we called it the Bean Pod of Ventures because we happened to have all four startup or colleges being there, and they were all pitching for a prize pool of $11,000, like real time, kind of like Shark Tank. So that was a really awesome experience, and definitely trying to bring back more of all of the schools together and collaborating and whatnot.
We need to do a lot more of that. One of our game developer entrepreneurs who's started his business when he was 13 and very successful was there and pitched. So we're trying to do more of that coordination. We really need it.
So what I'm not hearing is any focus on women and BIPOC entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so I can actually speak onto this. So I'm part of the executive board for WISE, which is the Women's Interdisciplinary Society of Entrepreneurship. We also adjacently have something called Women Who Empower, and I'm one of the co-VPs for our like flagship program called We Build. We Build is where we take women and other underrepresented genders and teach them the entrepreneurial mindset, like with a passion project of theirs. So it's kind of supposed to be the like pre like accelerator of IDEA to get you thinking about how to develop that mindset. And then by the end of it, they're able to take that framework and apply it anywhere. And then they'll also have like a product of whatever it is. So because it's a passion project, sometimes it's a research paper, it might be an actual product, it could be someone's personal brand, but we are focusing and bringing in that community-based and for specific women and underrepresented founders. Adjacently to that, I also started something called the Sustainable Innovation Network, which is a social entrepreneurship focused organization at Northeastern. We participated in something called the Holt Prize, spelled H-U-L-T. Holt, Boston, like kind of same thing. And that's a global social entrepreneurship pitch competition for $1 million. Last year, we were nominated for Best World Program of the Year at Northeastern, and we were able to go to like the finals in Paris and whatnot. So I would say Northeastern does have a focus on social impact and also women and underrepresented genders and backgrounds.
That is a great question, and you know, Northeastern has a ton of great stuff going on. It's interesting that I didn't bring that up because diversity, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion is central to who Suffolk is, and that's one of the reasons I came here. I used to be at Worcester Polytech out in Worcester, WPI. I really like the community that we work with here. It is just an integral part of our DNA. The original founder of Suffolk was given money as a, basically, he wanted to go to law school and he found someone who would give him money. He didn't really know the person, so after he graduated, he went back to give pay the guy back. The guy said, no, I want you to pay it forward. So he founded Suffolk, and everything that we do is about paying it forward. So we have a big DEI program. We also, so it's kind of integrated. The classroom, and it's probably the same at Northeastern, excuse me, these days, our classroom is a beautifully integrated mix of everything. Male, female, race, religion, country of origin. It's just a beautiful mix. And so everyone has opportunities, and I gotta say, the pitch competition and the IP pitch competition, I only remember last year at the moment, both were won. First and second place were females. And I believe second and third place for both of those competitions were international students of color. And so it's a really interesting mix. The other thing, and I forgot to mention, Suffolk just launched, was it 3 years ago now, a course for high school students in the summer. It's for juniors and seniors in the summer that is entrepreneurship. And it's a free course, so one of our alumni donated all the money for inner city kids. So we're specifically going to neighborhoods, junior achievement, and organizations like that, Boys and Girls Clubs, to bring in inner city kids that don't necessarily have access to as many resources as some others might, like the WPI population I come from. And so we're pulling from populations where, again, the classroom is a wonderful mix of everybody you can think of in terms of diversity, and it's just kind of become a part of our nature here in everything that we do. And I think all schools are starting to evolve to that point.
Yeah, definitely agree.
What are you guys going to do if the election
Oh, man.
brings in people who are not interested in DEI?
Doesn't matter, we're still going to do it. This is who we are. So, and I think I can safely say most of the schools here in Boston, if not all, are going to stick to what they're doing. The election is not going to influence what they do. Most of us are private schools anyway, so, it's not like they can come in and tell us you got to stop doing that.
So if the
You're here to just cause trouble now.
No. If the Supreme Court steps in and passes some legislation, do you guys have an alternative plan of how you would continue to reach out to these various populations?
Yeah, I don't think our outreach is not going to change. We still go out and pull from a wide variety of communities. Again, give out a lot of scholarships here at Suffolk. We're looking for those kind of people who kind of need a leg up, like our original founder. And so this is, again, part of our DNA. That's not going to change.
I'm a student, so I cannot speak to that. I will not speak for the administration of Northeastern, but personally will not change. However, whatever I do, the startups that I want to be making and currently I'm working on will not change that. Go ask from someone from Northeastern who works there. I'm just a student on doing that. But I do believe that concludes our panel for today. If you have any more questions or would like to follow up with us, I'll be staying after. I'm not sure you can connect with them as well. But thank you so much for being here.
Round of applause for our panel. Thank you guys so much, and thank you all for your time. I hope that you'll all stick around for the welcome party. It's at 6 in the lobby, so more